Good to see
And
you.
so you get for your students. But just to position everyone, um, I met Nils and Nevin in Beijing when they were at the Dalton Academy in Beijing, but you two have since gone down to Hunan to start the first offspring of that. So we're going to need to know how that has been relative to the all the mostly PBL model compared to local expectations, et cetera. But now you're in Calgary, right?
Yes,
Nell?
currently I'm in Calgary under quarantine, and I'm wearing my usual quarantine outfit, as you can see.
All right.
I,
Excellent. Good.
I
And
wear the bow tie every day. It makes me feel more, connected to the
more
world.
like cool, right?
Right.
Where are the other presenters? Where are you? Where are the other three of you sitting right now?
I'm currently at Hainan, China. Right now, yeah.
Okay. And students? Where are the students sitting right now?
I think our students are currently at Beijing right now. Like
In Beijing.
Yadi and Siqiao are located at Beijing.
Okay. Okay.
So north of China, very north of China, very south of China, and Calgary, Canada, just to throw a curveball.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Got it. Got it. So Nils, could you give us an opening introduction of this partly this piece of the transfer of the concept to the south of China, and
Yeah,
then
sure. So
characterization of how PBL works? You're in your first year now, right?
yeah, so we have a little bit of a formal part to the presentation. So our students have presentations that they would like to present, for lack of a more original word, about some of their experiences with a particular kind of project-based learning that we do at our school, and that is in our experiential learning program. And before that, Nevin Naiwan will give a little bit of an introduction about what that is, what our experiential learning program is. And this is something that we do at both campuses, and it's an important thread that connects our it's like a collaborative element that we do with our Beijing campus and the Haikou campus. So, and that is briefly, our students travel together from both campuses to a third location to engage in interesting research-based learning events and experiences as part of their curriculum. And so
Let me know. I have to jump in. Gabriel, are you still with us?
Yes,
Gabriel?
I am. I just got the host, so I'm on muting it. Okay? Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
And that explains their silence when I asked them what city they were in.
right.
I just got the host back, so now I can unmute everyone. All right. So kids and students, just don't unmute each other, because then I would have to unmute you. Okay. So it's easier to not mute yourselves.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for jumping. I'm sorry, Nils. I had to jump in because it was the best way to get them engaged. Could you start? Sure. You're talking about the relationship between the Beijing and Hainan, Hunan, and could you do that again? Because I think I
Sure. So basically, we are an international program that's embedded in a Chinese public school, which is one of the top schools in China. And we prepare students to transition from a public middle school program, Chinese national students, to through an international high school experience and on to some of the top universities in the world. So part of our goals, what we need to prioritize in that transition is an experience that really prepares students for not only university, but for life beyond university. And so project-based learning has a really important role to play in that. And experiential learning, our experiential learning program, is one way that we do that. It's one of our flagship programs, and it's something that allows our students from both campuses to meet each other, to build friendships, to collaborate both socially and on research projects. So without spending too much time talking about that, I'd like to sort of pass the mic over to Nevin, who can speak more specifically about the program and the details involved with that.
And thank you, Nils, for sharing. I have a PowerPoint to go through. So, hi everyone, my name is Yadi Wang from Affiliate High School of Peking University. I'm currently working as the ELP team member and student service. When we keep talking about ELP, it actually stands for like experiential learning program that happened in every May and November at Dalton. ELP is actually a project-based learning program. We take students to do a 10-day project in different locations. ELP have diverse topics that most related to SDG in order to give students a true experience by put them into real situation with the driving question. They're able to observe, study, and discuss and reflect in a deep and meaningful way and try to make a difference in the future. In Dalton, we believe that students will gain the experience once they see and feel the study content. It's not only an effective way to learn knowledge, it's also a good way to gain a sense of social responsibility. Once they see it from their own eye instead of a textbook, they may earn the first experience in not the second-hand information in classroom. Also, we encourage our students to make connections to the real world, having compassion for those social problems that may lack of attention, like refugees. Our students are able to take Dr. Gary Kuch's Jordan Middle East refugee crisis class and go to Jordan to visit those refugee camps and UN and NGO organization. And also they are able to engage in a scholarship program that would actually bring refugees back to Beijing, our school, to study for a year or two and go to higher education after. So also students also can working with experts in different areas to explore their interest and see the real world look like, real work look like. Like our students are working with biologists to collecting data in field at Sichuan province, China. And they are able to observe the impact of local bubblers on local plants. And those data would actually be used by local science to observe those energy changes in this area. Next slide, okay. Also, we guide students to think a lot about our driving question with using discussion-based sections to go depth with it. We spend a lot of time on reflections through the whole process. That's why we keep it in a small group size. Dalton would send like 2 or 3 teachers as a chaperone related to the subject, also heavily involved in the design process. And we also have 2 or 3 like local experts, and that would make 4 to 5 teachers with every 15 to 20 students, ensure that each student's experience is good. And the students are able to engage the investigation, creation works through the process and stepping out from the comfort zone. Project covered a wide range of topics that range from field research into Black rhino habits and in Kenya, and mindfulness and self-authorship in Beijing, giving students opportunity to explore the world and themselves through multiple lessons. So as you can see, the Australia human footprints is impact on environments. Before the trip, students already have the basic knowledge from the required course, biology course, and also students would have the handbook to have more professional preparation before the trip. And also during the trip, they're working with NGOs that would help people promote environmental friendly lifestyles. And at Dalton, we deeply concerned about that issue. And so that's why we have started promote environmental wellness more and more on campus. For example, our chemistry teacher, Ms. Li Junzi, have set up an environmental protection course and also recently launched do not order takeout food for one semester campaign to reduce the use of plastics. In Haikou campus that Frank just mentioned, Nils started a new program at Hainan province, China. And students actually did the same in the program, but by putting people choosing limit of time and giving them more choice of environmental friendly goal to do. For example, you can choose biking for school for a week or do not order takeout for a semester or a month. So helping people start something small and step by step to build the environmental friendly goals. And at the end, they will send a survey to learn what's the easy way to get started and what's the challenge those people who have failed the goal. And that's in order to helping students design a better supporting system for promoting our ideas. And also we have like local project like collection of ancient books in National Library, and the student able to go to Japan to learn traditional art craft making. That's interesting because students are first time hand out their cell phone for 3 days just to doing Zen and focus on the art craft, which applies to the spirit of Japanese traditional art making. And also we have like a lot, each year we have like 20 to 30 different projects located in different places with different topics around the world, as you can see. I don't have time to go through everyone, but I would point out the Kenya one. Our students are able to get into the center of the conservation zone because they have great resource through the authority. Also, our students in the last 3 years doing this project are able to witness the last white rhino death in the earth. And we doing this project not only because they have great resource, also we are helping local organization to protect those like endangered species. And also you can see Singapore and the Cambodia project are related to sustainable development with local communities. And the Italy one is actually related to our course. And there is also Dali, Guizhou, Guangxi project is focused on the minority culture in China. So if you are interested in our project, we have magazine and we have our WeChat public account. You can take a look. And also we do encourage students take lead in Dalton. So students are able to develop their own ELP, which we call it IELP, to let students design the ELP, and we help them to promote the program and the recruiting students. The last part I do want talking about the ELP learning circle in Dalton, because ELP is a 10 days project. And in order to make our project more meaningful, it's important to understand what happened before ELP and what happened after ELP. So before ELP, students will take required course that would provide academic background and also subject-related teacher as a chaperone in ELP project. And those teachers are heavily involved with our project design process. As you can see, ELP actually can consider a course extension for those related courses. And also ELP provide practical opportunities, resource, evidence, and research data to supporting the class. And also students will gain inspiration during ELP project to find the interest. And those interests can be transformed into learning directions, and in-depth research can be carried out through IRP, which I have to mention. IRP is a 1-year research paper with the theme student choose by themselves, with a topic student choose by themselves. So in IRP course, teacher would train students to learn the academic research methods, and related course teacher will give them like more professional knowledge. So IRP and the related courses are supporting each other, and those independent project in Dalton is actually interconnected, and is making our 10 days ELP project more meaningful. Also, we really focused on the 4-part, the experiential learning circle. First is pre-preparation and the daily briefing, and then we intend to let students present by themselves and represent what they have learned in abstract way. And at the end, we hopefully they're developing some ideas for project, a group project as an outcome. Thank you, everyone. And that's my part. I would like to introduce our students, Wang Yadi and Liang Siqiao, to show you how they did, how the experience in one particular ELP, which is Jordan ELP.
Okay, Niven, thank you for that big overview. I'm full of questions, but I want to hear the students first, okay?
Yes,
I'll be
that's
back.
perfect.
I'll be back to you.
Thank you.
Are students muted?
Yadi. Yeah, Yadi is here.
Yeah.
They're unmuted, they're fine.
Okay.
Hold on.
You are both unmuted, so Yadi, whoever wants to start.
Okay, are you good, Yadi?
Yeah, I think Yadi is muted right now.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, there she is. No, we can't see your screen.
Oh.
Yes, I can see your screen, Yadi.
Oh, maybe it's just me. Never mind.
Oh.
And
I
we
can't
can
see. No, I frankly, I
You
cannot
guys?
see.
Okay. So, hi, I am Yadi. I am a senior 1 student currently studying Dalton Academy. So last year I went to Jordan for my ELP in order to do more researches about refugees, and we stayed there for 2 weeks. We mostly spent our time in JRS, which is Jesuit Refugee Service Center. That's where we met most refugees. So we usually spend our whole afternoon there to do presentations about our Dalton Scholarship Program, the Chinese education system, and some basic information about our high school. So we communicate with them and got to know them, and we share different stories in our life. Anyways, this presentation is based on my ELP to Jordan, and thanks for all the people who's being there. You mean really much to me, and you mean really much to my topic for today, refugees. So here's my topic, is Jordan an oasis for refugees?
Yadi, sorry to interrupt. We can't see your screen. Like, we can see you, but we can't see your PPT.
Oh. Wait, hold on.
Gabby, have you given her the screen share possibility? Gabriel,
she can screen share. She just needs to.
can you guide her to where the button is?
Yeah, it's right in the middle of your screen. You can. It's a green button with a square and an arrow facing up.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So. Hold on.
No, I think we lost them. She might have accidentally gotten herself off the call.
Oh, press the wrong button. Yeah.
All right.
Well, could we go out of order and while she's getting back in?
Yeah, I think that would be
Yeah.
fine if Siqiao, if you wanted to go next.
Yes, can everyone see my screen?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Okay, so I am Siqiao. I'm currently to be a senior 2 in Dalton Academy, the affiliated high school of Peking University. I've been participated in Jordan Experiential Learning Program for 2 times, one for my senior 1 year and the other for my senior 2 year. So basically, let me share my 2 years experience and what I've learned during these trips. The first year when I was a senior 1, I went to Jordan. It was a tiny group. We only get 6 students and 2 faculties instead of 16 students. So I've got a lot of chances to talk with refugees and local students. Also with the experience visiting Chinese Embassy, Jordanian Higher Population Council, many NGOs and different United Nations agencies, many of those complicated concepts I've learned in the refugee study class in our school became clear. And when I came back to China for the first time, I decided to write a paper illustrating how different refugee regimes were unable to deal with the refugee crisis efficiently. Basically, that's my first year experience. And that year experience led me to concern about refugee crisis. When I became a senior 2, as Nevin has mentioned,
Oh, did he freeze up there?
Yeah, I will send him a message.
We have a bandwidth
No.
problem.
Oh, well, Yadi's back. We can kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Should I continue or just?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well, kind
Let's
of
go.
yeah, please.
So I should continue?
Yeah, I think, probably a good idea. It seems to be frozen.
Yeah.
We lost Siqiao, so yeah.
We have a bandwidth problem on his connection.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, here's my topic is Jordan and Oasis for refugees. Someone who's as drunk as Fowler, freezing to death on the street corner. Someone who's finally made up their mind and decided to find a way out. And someone disappeared quietly. So here's the thing I'm going to talk about, refugees. Now, what is refugees? Does anyone here know what is a refugee? I'm going to show you some pictures and please try to answer that question in your mind. After seeing these pictures, do you get an impression based on your recognition of refugees? Technically, refugee is someone who crossed international borders because of war and then being displaced. So here's a very tricky question. How many refugees exist in this world? How many refugees are there? So let me show you something. This is the data from UNHCR official. Let me introduce you the 2 biggest UN associations that dealing with refugee crisis nowadays. The first one is UNHCR, which stands for the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. And the second one is UNRWA. So UNRWA stands for the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees in the Near East. And it is an old refugee institution for Palestinian refugees. And their main purpose is to deal with Palestine problem and the problem of new refugees from Syria. So back to my question. According to this data, it says 20.4 million under UNHCR mandate, 5.5 million under UNRWA mandate. So when you add them up, there are 25.9 million refugees, right? But think about it and keep 25.9 million in your mind. The official data could only reflect part of the truth. What is really happening out there is there are much more than 25.9 million refugees now living in this world. And I repeat much for 3 times just because it's very important in the refugee field. So why? The data 25.9 million is only from those who registered with UNHCR and UNRWA, and then they became one of the members of those statistics on these official websites. Most of the refugees do not register with UNHCR nor UNRWA. For those who do not register, they are everywhere, and we have a very limited knowledge about them. So refugee crisis happened, and it is happening. But what is we do not know? Now, what reason makes some refugees don't register? And what reason drives some refugees register with UNHCR? Well, the refugees who are thinking about whether they should register with UNHCR, they think about it very precisely. So what thing makes them thinking that deep? Is it a lifetime choice? Yes. So firstly, what happened to those refugees who registered? UNHCR provides basic needs for the refugees who register. So for example, cash system, case interview, and work permits. And for those who registered, they became refugees, international official refugee. What does that mean? Everywhere you go, you'll be officially recognized as a refugee instead of someone who belongs to a country, which means they lost their nationalities. And behind that, your kids and your generations will all officially lost their original national identities. On the other hand, to register with UNHCR doesn't mean you'll 100% given jobs. You will barely get work permits from UNHCR. Think about it, no job, no education for the rest of your life. And why do I say the word barely? From UNHCR officials, there are only 156,000 work permits for Syrian refugees all in Jordan, which means after you finally get a work permit from the officials, you still have to compete with the local Jordanian people. But the job for refugees has to be basic, like a peasant or a farmer, because the Jordanian government cannot let refugees to compete with local Jordanians to have a job like engineer. So see, that's how competitive for refugees to get a job. In 2015, the Jordanian population is 6 million. And for the refugees that stays in Jordan, they're about 1/3 of Jordanian population. Yes, 2 million for refugees living in this about 90,000 square kilometers country. So now it is very obvious to see what kinds of refugee register with UNHCR. It's those refugees who is driven into a corner, who is desperate, they register with UNHCR. It's a phenomenon that some of refugees, more specifically, most refugees, that they don't register with UNHCR or UNRWA. They will still keep their national identities and being regarded as a foreigner or local people, and they could find a job privately and evade local tax. But what if the police find them working privately? They'll kick them out of the country and send them back to their own country, like Syria. And remember, even there are wars happening in your country where your home was destroyed and your human right was deprived, you will still be sent back and you don't have a choice to be resettled in a third country anymore. Now, I know how serious this refugee problem is. I want to do more. I hope the international institutions to help more. But I realize from different perspectives, whether for us, teenagers, or big associations like UNHCR, all of us, we realize that the thing we could do are very limited. As you see how serious the refugee condition is, let's come back to my topic. Is Jordan an oasis for refugees? So think about it for several seconds. The question is a general question, so the answer should only be yes or no. What if I say no? Because less and less work permits really works. So people do jobs illegally, which is very risky. And for refugees who already got a job, they get low salary as well. So there are so many instabilities of refugee regime and problem. And let me share some stories. We went to JRS, Jesuit Refugee Service Center, for a lot of times. And that's where I met refugees for the first time. The first refugee I met in Jordan is a Yemenis, and he has four family members in his family, including his mom, his nephew, his sister, and he tried to find a job in a restaurant to see whether he could wash dishes. He speaks English really fluently, and the staffs there were, of course, very satisfied with it. But when the staff asked him, where is he from? And then he said, I'm from Yemen. And the staff seems to realize something and said, we don't need a Yemenis. We only need a Jordanian. And this is how a Yemenis refugee were trying so hard to get a job to take care of his family, but failed. Here's the second story. There is a NGO providing online school for refugees, and this institution is supported by some universities in the United States. So it's pretty authoritative in the international community. I know a refugee whose name is Fowler, and she learned and studied in this organization for 3 years and finally got her diploma of English and education. So right now, she's a teacher in a Jordanian school affiliated to this organization in order to teach the refugee students whether the education or living condition. Fowler is definitely above the average. She's doing a great job among refugees in Jordan, but being as a teacher, still, she cannot get an appropriate salary. And 5 days before we left Beijing to Jordan, there is a strike for teachers happen in Jordan just because their salary is decreasing and decreasing all the time. And what if I say yes to my question? Because the most panic moment in the refugee lives comes down because of this country, Jordan, and they got resettled in Jordan. So Jordan for them is more like a second home. Let me share some different stories, and it sort of refresh my stereotype to refugees. Well, not all the refugees get no job, no money, no family. Some of them sort of changed its future already. I've met a refugee establish a company, including True Jordanian and 4 refugees, and their company earns $500 million a year. So there are still a lot of refugees already changed the future in Jordan. And here's a second case. I still remember when I was socializing and chatting with the refugee students from honor school for the last time. I answered a lot of questions about our scholarship program. Well, Dalton Academy accepted one student from Jordan for a whole tuition scholarship to finish their last 2 years of their high school, and we have counselors who help them to apply to college and go abroad as well. So what I think at first is that they're so expected to change their future, and they have great ambitions to change the world. But something shocked me is that they were asking me whether the scholarship program can apply to a Jordanian college or university. And they were asking me over and over again. So I'm really confused. I mean, if you have a better choice to go abroad, like go to some developed countries, the probabilities of changing your future is more than going to a Jordanian university. And most of people in the international society are so desperate to get a chance to go abroad for studying, and barely no one will ever think about to go to a Jordanian university. But my teacher, Gabby, stands with their point of view and said they want somewhere of peace. They want to stay with their family, and I finally got their point. They're in panic when the war happened, and the emotions of panic somehow attached to them, just like they're going to lose everything. And Jordan somehow gave them some forces of confidence to encourage the refugees, to tell them that Jordan is somewhere they could still stay in this world. And all they want is not a life like going to top universities. All they want is just an ordinary and common happiness. They want the basic things, and that's the most things that they are appealing for. So that's the end of my question. Was the answer to my topic, yes or no? From here, you'll discover that there isn't any ultimate answers for this question. Same thing that happened in our daily life. Most of the questions haven't gotten exact answers of yes or no. From the explanations of whether Jordan is an oasis for refugees, you see, we support yes and no by standing on different perspectives of a thing, but answering yes or no is not the purpose that I'm questioning about my topic. My purpose is to let us discuss the refugee problems and my thoughts about refugees based on this topic question. And there are still a lot of stereotypes about refugees. refugees do not represent poorness nor stupid. The definition of refugee is someone being displaced and crossed the international border because of wars, and their basic living authority is deprived. So this is what refugee is, which is different from most people's impressions. So at the beginning, refugee to me is only a definition on the book. It's actually none of my business. So I'm just curious about refugees. But after I went to Jordan, just like the purpose of establishing ELP, experiential learning program, I've learned it, I've experienced it, and I went to Jordan, I feel it. And refugee is not only a definition to me anymore, not a word on the book to me anymore. It became part of my life experiences. And now refugees actually turned into my business now. So thank you all for listening, and Siqiao will introduce more about his ELP experiences.
Could we have time for just one question before we have Siqiao? And I'm glad you're back with us, Siqiao. Looks like you were frozen there for a little bit. Yadi, you put on so many things on the table and so many details. Is it okay if I ask one question and then we move on? And I'm also watching the clock. We have 22 minutes before we have the bewitching hour.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you did very thorough research. I am guessing you did a lot of that research before you went to Jordan, and the manner that Nevin outlined. There's preliminary work to do, and then there's the event, and then there's follow-up work. Am I correct? That's how you.
Yeah.
That's how this is done. Okay.
We attended a course about refugee with Dr. Gary Medicucci, and we actually did a lot of research because we attended a lot of class. We have 2 classes in each week, and basically Dr. Gary asked us to read books before we have class, and during the class he will introduce something that we cannot learn from a book. And actually our teacher let us read the book. Actually, it's in order to kind of like criticize, it's a way to develop our critical thinking, because that book about refugees is written by a European, I guess, and our teacher are trying to let us to stand with different perspectives. Like if you're a European, how will you regard refugees? And if you're Middle East people, how do you regard this question or this problem? Yeah, so we actually did a lot of research before we went to Jordan. That's how we, yeah.
So you went to Jordan well prepared, but well prepared from a distance. When you got to Jordan, from your description of your activities, it sounded like you carried on your research, but in a different way, talking to people, etc. And so I'm very curious as to whether your field experience, as part of your ELP, I'm sorry, did it change anything from your more academic research before you got there? Did you have any big ahas, perhaps contradicting some things that you said?
Yeah, I think actually the most, so for me, I think, firstly is some regime. I thought it's, actually, I think the most important thing in this ELP program is just experience the program, because before this program, we've learned a lot of things from the book and from our teacher, but something like we could actually experience more when we really experience it, is instead of reading a definition or just learn it. For example, I thought I could do a lot for refugees. I don't know why, but like I am a teenager, so I'm really ambitious. So I thought I could do a lot of things for them. I thought the refugee problem is very well known and very well known for all the other people. But the fact is, no, because when they're even the Jordanian people, they don't really know what refugees are suffering and what they are experiencing. And also, I don't think like I am 100% sympathetic for refugees, because actually refugees problem is something that the government already know, but they have no idea to deal with. Like they have no ways to deal with this problem, because now in Jordan, like everyone knows that refugees work privately. Everyone knows. Like there are a lot of waiters that are refugees in any restaurant, pizza restaurant, and the police there know that they are refugees, but they cannot just arrest them because there are too much. They're literally too much, and yeah, I thought like before I don't really know anyone who's a refugee, but after I actually made some friends that who are refugees, I feel like this refugee definitions is actually more close to me. Like it's not that strange or far away, and going to Jordan is actually like I am fitting in that society, and I am actually experienced the life being as kind of like a fake Jordanian. I'm experienced a life with full of refugees, and yeah, a lot of definitions and regime and problems are actually more serious, but like people all know that there are some problems with it, but they don't like they can't do anything. They don't have that ability to do that. For example, police, they cannot arrest all of them. There are 2 millions, and actually like probably over 90% refugees, they don't register with UNHCR or UNRWA, and they cannot arrest them all and kid them all back. It's actually, yeah, it's something that cannot do. Yeah.
Yadi, let me jump in here in the interest of time. So it sounds like your trip with the ELP to go to the Middle East brought you a visceral understanding that you could not have gotten academically. It brought you a visceral, in your gut understanding of the many layers of the problem, which is almost impossible to solve, in part based on the numbers. And by my way of understanding, boy, that's worth the price of getting there, and that's powerful learning. So kudos to you, and your research sounds deep, and I'm glad you learned something very, very different when you got there. So if we could, because now we have the bandwidth back, could we have Siqiao tell us some things? And we have only 15 minutes, probably only 12 minutes total before the timing police come in and tell us we have to stop. So you were in the middle of a presentation before. Do you want to cue that up, Siqiao, and take the reins?
Okay, I can keep with where I stopped.
And I don't know how long this is, but we do have to honor the clock.
Okay, I can control the time. I just keep going with my second year experience. So basically inspired by what I've learned in my first year, I decided to focus my IRP on refugee crisis. I worked with my supervisor, and based on my academic interest, we identified informal economic networks among Syrian refugees in Jordan as my IRP topic. I examined the literature with all of those theoretical frameworks in mind, and I decided to go to Jordan for a second time. I decided to first meet those refugees again, and second, collect data from my research. You know, with a specific topic in mind, the world just changed when I arrived at Jordan for the second time. Like when I went to a restaurant, I would think about if there's a Syrian refugee working here without a work permit, and when I went to a hotel, I would think if the boss of the hotel have hired some refugees in order to reduce the cost. This time started to actively asking, and primarily through the method of interview. I have few Syrian refugee friends, and I actually worked with one of them to have interviews to refugees in the Syrian refugees in the market, or on the street in the shops or something. Yes, even though I know that refugees will only tell me what they want to be represented the most, the commonality from their answers was just still shocking. How they suffered, how they were discriminated, and how their lives were destroyed by the war. Basically, most of my interviewees are informal workers, and people know that. That is an open secret. So here's the typical case. When I interviewed a Syrian refugee in the market, he told me that he'd been at Jordan from 2013, and he's been there for 6 years by the time I interviewed him. During these 6 years, he has changed jobs for over 20 times because his bosses always exploited him. And there isn't a workers' union can help him because, who's going to help an illegal worker? And the bosses can just kick out refugees whenever they want because there are so many of them are looking for jobs on the street. Once a boss gave him two choices, either being kicked out or having a salary cut down by 25%. So which one would you like to choose if you were him, to stay or to leave? I mean, for this question, it depends, right? By the time he was informed this from his boss, he just got a new kid and he spent all of his savings in the hospital, but that's still not enough. He had to borrow money from outside, from his friends to pay for the hospital. And it was already hard for him to support his whole family, even without having a new kid or having a salary cut down by something like 25%. So that's, from this and other cases, I was emotionally shook. It was much more impressive than what I've experienced in the first time because, as I said, I started to actively observing and asking rather than simply listening. But beyond that, I also got data from my research. I saw how different interpersonal networks operate and how they influence refugees, and which was really helpful for my research. But beyond that, what truly made this trip special to me was the following few points. The first one is that there was one sentence during my research that truly important to me and helped me to form my own perspective. The main idea of that sentence was this: economically and socially disadvantaged people in the Middle East tend to live informally, not because they are non-modern or anti-modern, but instead it was because the cost of a modern pattern of life is just so high, so expensive for them. So this time I saw its practice in real life. I applied them to refugees perfectly, and I saw how refugees are forced to be illegal workers. And that is super, super impressive. And the second thing is that after exposing to so many impressive stories, what I've learned is this: I cannot understand a refugee. I mean, that is true. You can't understand a refugee unless you really become one of them for at least 3 or 5 years. But I tend to use what Maggie Yadi has mentioned. I feel it more, or my mind grew to be more empathetic. I've started to share feeling with those refugees. Like when I interviewed a refugee in a boisterous market in the dusk, I could feel his loneliness and helplessness, and that made me sad as well. But what was challenging during the trip to me, which was also the aspect I got improved the most, was the ability to share perspectives. I primarily interviewed Syrian refugees, but I also talked with people with different social status. A Jordanian would tell me this: actually, our Jordanians are even in worse situation because, for Syrians, they have NGOs and UN. And the Syrian person with a decent life and a legitimate work permit told me that he was thankful to his company to help him get a job as a manager in Jordan. But he didn't really know about those Syrians who are in bad condition. There are still a lot of other perspectives from refugees. One of my refugee friends said, that a Syrian in Jordan didn't care about other Syrians was equal to that a Syrian hated other Syrians. So which was confusing at first to me. And people said that all of those NGOs, institutions are fake, they are liars. They cheated refugees' profiles and they used those profiles to earn money from UN, but they didn't give this money to refugees. Instead, they used money to develop themselves, growing from a small house in a big building in just 1 year. So when you're exposed to so many stories, so many perspectives, which one is right and which one is wrong, which one should you really agree with on? During that process, what did help me was that I've got a chance to hear each of their stories, which lead me to say how and why they formed that specific perspectives as they expressed when talking with me. And that led me to say that each of those perspectives, no matter how scrutable they seem to be, are in fact to be totally reasonable and kind of acceptable. When we went to different institutions, it's primarily the UN ones and the NGOs, we've all learned that they're in need of fund. They don't have money, and that is the biggest problem there. But during this trip, I personally I'm able to identify mistrust and misinformation as two other core issues there. And this mistrust and misinformation have already produced hatred, conflict, and aggravated the discrimination to refugees in the social level. So all of these, what I witnessed during the trip and after the trip. Yeah, let me talk about what we witnessed after the trip. Things are not operating well in the Middle East and a lot of work hasn't been done yet. Recently, my refugee friend told me that refugees in cities are depleting their savings and they couldn't go out to earn money because of the coronavirus public health situation. And from the news, I've also learned that a lot of NGOs in countries like Lebanon could not enter the camp to help refugees due to the same situation. So all of those, what I've learned after the ELP trip, are kind of asking me to do something to make some contribution. So that's when I started to develop some programs. Last winter, when I came back to China from my second ELP trip, I worked with my roommates and designed a social networking program cooperating with a local NGO that I'm familiar with in Jordan. We give presentations, we collected our audience's words to refugees and their contacts, and we helped few refugees to learn English in the past few months. 2 weeks ago, I just finished up this poster I'm showing to you. So all of these projects my friend and I have developed from the ELP trip and the ELP trip themselves, I regard them as something important and meaningful. And all of those projects, I would say, they're worth to keep doing. So that's basically my story.
Wow, what a trip. What a trip. Can I, great presentation. It's Siqiao, right? Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, close enough for non-native. So two compelling stories. Let me take this back to the educators. So the big takeaway that I got, and Siqiao said it, he gained empathy. He learned empathy. Was that an expectation for Nevin and Nils and students carrying out this project, or is it even close to what you expected was going to be one of the big learnings from this project?
Hi, Frank. First, I apologize for Nels's internet is shutting down, so he's not able to continue the meeting, but I'm sorry for the inconvenience. But yeah, for sure, that empathy is definitely a goal of our project, because when students really, like, we keep talking about protect the earth, like, have a better lifestyles to reduce the use of plastics or something like that. But when students actually truly feeling and see those beauty of nature and to learn like practical skills, students definitely change the mind. And yeah, for sure, it's definitely a part we expecting one thing student would gain from the trip. And also, we intend to keep our program not just for 1 year program. For example, Jordan, we repeating the program each year, and each year we developing it in different way, and in other project too. And we intend to working with professionals, organizations like NGO, government embassy, instead of just traveling agencies that we can develop each year with different angles. Yeah.
So, and one of the good things about doing, call it a project year after year after year, is that students anticipate being able to do it. They know what their older students had done and moved on, and they get their chance. So it's a beautiful program. So yeah, it's working. So let me take this back to the student, and we only have 3 minutes, and I think Nick is going to jump in probably in a minute and a half. So if empathy was one of the big learning outcomes, can you comment on where your empathy goes? Is it empathy focused on the plight of Middle Eastern, or does it shift to other populations who are also unfortunate, perhaps to even rural Chinese who don't have the advantages of living in the city, or perhaps others in other Asian countries? What are you going to do with your empathy now that you've got some? Where did it go?
Basically,
Where did you transfer to?
I have much to say about that. So basically, I think empathy is something can be transferred in different contexts. So basically, actually the first time when I learned empathy was in the context of autonomy of students. Like our school is famous for students' autonomy. So at that time, I made a lot of mistakes when I was in the student government. So, and this experience led me to learn a little bit about empathy. But this Middle Eastern trip led me to sort of kind of see its application, how it's shown in real life, and how it helped me to to share feelings and perspectives with all of my interviewees. And that is crucial in that empathy is something can reduce the conflicts when you cannot fully understand another person. So during that process, when you don't understand another person, if you have empathy, you get better in the process of understanding that person. So I do think it is transferable. Like when I cooperating with my friends in the daily life, I could use empathy to learn how their behaviors real means, no matter how ridiculous it would be. So it is really helpful in my life after the ELP trip, like especially in the past few months.
Okay, and so yes, I thought your answer was going to be applied to different populations, but you've actually applied it and focused on those immediately around you. So good learning, good learning. Yadi, in 30 seconds, can you add anything to that? Because we
Yeah.
are well beyond our time right now.
Sure. I think for me, empathy, this ELP trip is not, it's not like only makes me feel empathy toward only like refugees or only like Middle East people. I do really feel, I do emphasize those, I do feel empathy about those refugees and those Jordanians. They have no ideas how to deal with these problems. This is, they have no idea. So at first, I'm only I'm really empathy with those refugees and Middle East people. But after I came back to Beijing, I feel like this empathy could actually works in your daily life. It could work in every situation. Like if you feel empathy, for example, in a family, if you feel empathy with your, if you empathy with your parents, and sometimes probably your parents, it's gonna like make you mad sometimes, but if you actually stand with them and to see what do they actually want to do, and to see their purpose. So you could actually understand more, and your situation for your whole like the your relationship with your mom and dad will be more relaxing, I guess. Like actually I feel this empathy could works in every situation. Like if you actually just feel a little, just stand with others' point for a little while, you could like actually your horizon actually is actually expanding. And yeah, that's how I feel. Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like powerful learning in all of its different aspects. So thank you very much to students. Thank you, Nevin, and thank you, Nils, who we've lost. And I'll
I'm
just
back.
say that
Thank you.
I had
Thank you, Frank.
bunches of other, oh, there you are. I had bunches of other questions, but we're gonna have to hold those until October when we do another 24 hours of PBL Plus, and maybe we can get them launched at you at that time. So thank you so much. It's been a good show.
Thank you, Frank,
Thank
for
you.
such a great opportunity.
Great,
Bye.
thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.